You know, Vanya must really like Honkai Star Rail. That's all I ever see them play, apparently. Wow, crazy. Been playing Honkai Star Rail for 4 months. That's wow. Wow. Good morning. Good morning. Good morning. Good morning. How is everyone doing today? One second while I shake this up. Pinky, I can't believe you're still in New Zealand. You've been gone for so long. Are you just moving to New Zealand now? I don't blame you. You lived in a fake country before. There's 12-acre wide fire 100 feet away from my house. I wish you the best of luck, honeypot. Be safe. Be careful. Good morning, Eurofrosty. Thank you for getting first. Vanya, thank you for getting second. Aika, thank you for getting third. Oh, I forgot all about that. I don't need that, but thank you, thank you, thank you. Let's say hello to everybody who's here this morning. Good morning, Eurofrosty and Icon Shiny. Good morning, Anya and Lilith Queen. Good morning, Cat. Good morning, Casey. Good morning, Svel. Cat is here now. Good morning. Yes, Carmia, you can DM me the app. DM me a question about the app, that's fine. Good morning, Pingy and Vanya. Good morning, Crucified. And thank you for the follow, Honeypot. Welcome, welcome, welcome. Oh, actually, Honeypot's still first, so Honeypot's actually first, no chat. It's too late. Honeypot is the first one now. Sorry, you've been robbed. That phone is cracked. Oh, well. Okay, I'll drink some water this morning. Oh, not Crucified is first, actually, chat. I'm sorry, Crucified is first. And now we're stuck in the Southern voice for a little while. Oh, it's Crucified again. It was Shiny, but now it's Crucified. And not Shiny again. Good morning, Fauna. How you doing? Oh, Vanya's first. Good job, Vanya. I'm proud of you for being first. Oh, it's Crucified again. Thank you so much for the follow. Now it's Shiny. We'll check on it again in about 5 minutes and see who's really first. So, we are going to do a little gaming today. Just a little chill gaming. How'd you sleep, Fawn? Or are you just now going to sleep? Oh, it's Anya. Anya's first now. Wow, Anya sneaking in and taking first is very impressive. Oh, it's Vanya again. Good job, I'm proud of you. So today we're going to be doing a little Minecraft, because Minecraft's been a lot of fun. Gotcha. Well, fun. Relax all you can here. Close your eyes. Enjoy this moment. I have a coffee and a bagel from Tim Hortons. Me? I have a large bottle of water I filled up with G Fuel to slowly wake me up during the day. And then I have 3 spicy tuna rice balls, as well as some sriracha mayo for my breakfast. Mm-hmm. 2 liters of Dr. Pepper and Oreo muffins. And Oreo muffins sounds delicious, honestly. I think I'm loving Oreo muffin. Mm-hmm. Why are you in love with me? Well, we're gonna get to that one once the Southern voice is finished. 2 more minutes before that one will kick in. Mm-hmm, mm-hmm. All you hear is croaking. Why are you listening? Why are you listening to frogs? Who's a frog up in here? Mm-hmm. Alright, see if this world is still around. Oh, there's the frog. I forgot about that one. Good morning, Moreau. Good morning. How was school? You do good? Oh. Pinky, I never forget about you. Alright. 1 more minute and Vanya gets what Vanya wants. Hello, kitties. God, y'all so adorable. Y'all be good, okay? Timbit. I love a Timbit. Und jetzt, so ja, this is the thing that you were looking for, wasn't it? You'd asked for this. And I had forgotten that I had put this in here. So I will have to go through this nice and slow for you, as you have requested. Mayhaps this one will not stick around when I do the ASMR funds. Good morning, Barry. Good morning, Nico. Thank you for the drink. And it looks like Anya has won the first redeems. And it's now Anya who's in the lead. Alright, let's do a little exploring around here and see what we can find. Oh, no, never mind. It's Anya again. Good job. I'm so proud of you. Was ist los in der Bundespost? There is. Good morning, Heike. Warum? Because there was the German Leora team. We have a new voice redeem. So when that one is there, I must go to that one and, you know, play around with it. Oh. Yeah. What about Scotland? That's one I cannot do yet. Good morning, TNT. How are you? I'm adding a Welsh character now. I don't know how to do Welsh. Why would you have me do that one? British. That one is hot enough. Trying to make me do such silly things. Why would you do this? Very good to know. And yet, was habt ihr hier? Mehr Brot und andere Zeug? And we'll take that. Maybe I want a cauldron. Well, I'm glad to see you're doing good. Oh, I have too much things. Give me a second. Eine Shoutout für meine Freunde. This is not my birthday. It is not my birthday. Jane, I love you, but it's not for the same reason as others. Having a time, your comedy has been the best thing I've ever made friends here. Of course. Well, I'm glad you feel that way. I'm very glad you feel that way. I wonder if we can make a tunnel between here and there. There's something so nice about tunnels, you know? Especially when they're very clean and organic. God damn it, chat, I'm going to start doing this voice for a while and I'm going to forget that there's a timer and it's just going to become a part of my repertoire again. Imagine me stuff like this all the time. And now we can drop it again. Except that's immediately back in the southern. What? Okay. Normal voice. Here it is. There's the thumb that counts. I appreciate it. And I do not like Big Macs. He gets stuck in a Stitch voice. Oh my god, that'd be awful. That'd be the worst. I cannot imagine that. Ohana means family. Chad, did you know that bamboo is one of the fastest growing grasses out there? It is crazy how fast bamboo can grow. No. My username is #1 Big Mac Lover. Your voice. I do think it's funny everybody has that voice, has a voice that they do. Right. I'm gonna start making this look a lot prettier. It's not what I wanted. What are you humming about? That one's funny. Chat, when I was younger, I was interested in this British girl, and the only English I could really speak was to the British girl and her family. So, after a while, I started imitating the British way of speaking.
Woo, thank you for stream. I hope you have the best morning.
Thank you, thank you. Let me turn that down a little bit. Or here's what I'll do, chat. I'm going to set this so that I can hear it in ASMR streams, but y'all can't. There we go. Ah, thank you, thank you. No, you're fine. I didn't even think about that. I apologize. I apologize that that went off, but I fixed it and I appreciate it. Mm. Yeah, you still like my voice. I'm glad to hear. But you're here for now while I clear the sound. Oh, fine. Crispers. What are crispers? Who got first? Oh, it looks like TNT is first now. Proud of you, TNT. Mm-hmm. Nice. Oh, it's bedtime, kitties? Alright, bedtime. Mm-hmm. I love these kitties. They're a Canadian snack. I think that people called the white one mango. I don't know about the other one, but I think the white one's name was mango. Enjoy your working. Mm. Mm. Thank you for the follow. Greatly, greatly appreciated. How you doing, Ox? Mm. No window yet. No, no, my pickaxe broke, chat. Sunlight is overrated. You're right, you're right. Oh, the kitty cats want my attention. Okay. No, this is a first, but I'm gonna do this because it's been so annoying not having one. Chat, I'm gonna make myself a lovely little backup shield. Probably a decent amount. I mean, any country with enough effort could. But I don't think about it too much. We're gonna need to find a new bell to replace the old one. Good morning, Aura. How you doing? It's true, it's true. You don't need no sunlight. What do you need sunlight for? You do need sunlight, actually, chat. Not much, Anya. How you doing? Oh, there's a house way up there. We should go take a look at it. I mean, Canada did great during other world wars. And, I mean, any group can have a propensity for violence, so, you know. I don't know the current state of the Canadian military, but I assume it's decently well equipped. And anyone with enough firepower and weapons can do good in any war. So just about as good as any other nation with enough effort. Thank you for the stretch. Not politics, just how would Canada do in a war? Thank you for the stretch. Good morning, John. How you doing? I want a tree there. Oh, good. I wish you the best of luck. Good morning, Gummy Moose. Good morning, good morning, good morning. Thank you for the follow. No winner this time. No winner this time. Morning, Zebra. How you doing, Lovey? Yes, I did remove that for now. I've removed quite a few redeems that were more, you know. I may bring them back eventually. But I realized some people were redeeming them every day and getting a bit obsessed with them. So I'm balancing it out a little bit for now. You did redeem that. Oh, redeem which stuff? You're fine. I know, Anya, and you're fine, Anya. That was fun. I think we can just slowly fix up this town. Welcome home, Vanya. And I hope you had a good time while you're out. Did you see anything fun? Do anything exciting? Mm-hmm. But I think I'll be adding some poetry reading to redeems, as well as some more creative things. And I plan on opening a Patreon soon, where custom voice requests can be made of any kind. Patreon my nuts. I don't know how I do that one, Vanya, but I'm sure you can figure out a way. That's fair. I will have other platforms I will try to put it on as well. Hmm. That's fair. Mm-hmm. Yep, that did happen. Thank you for the bet, Anya. Really appreciate it. Always really appreciate it. Hmm. Morning Echo. How you doing today? Hi, kitties. You all be safe while we're traveling through the mines, okay? I don't want to lose you. I think we need some more wind. Hmm. Alright, remember there's always a Discord if you want to have general conversation. But please keep things more relevant to the current stream. Where you sit by the moon? Mm-hmm. Kitties, I need you. Scare off the creeper, please. Good job, Kitty. I'm so proud of you. You don't have to worry about that bond. Just to kind of explore and build a home. Eventually beat the game. Not die. Unfortunately, we've been out for too long. And I forgot about the nighttime. They'll find each other, that's fine. Mm-hmm. I need to get some dogs. I think they would help. Oh no, not Mango. I'm so sorry, Mango. You got too close. Good morning, Nia. How you doing? Thank you, thank you, thank you. I will do my best to have a great stream. Thank you for shouting out the lovely Nia. They are very entertaining and an incredible streamer. If you like ASMR, you should go check them out. I'm not capable of doing that, but if I could, I would. Come on. Come in. Good boy. Chat, you've all seen the full model. Have you all not seen the full model before? It just goes. It's a little guy. Boom, 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 boom. He does have long legs. Well, chat, I'm 6'4". Were you expecting me to be short? Don't eat me. No eating me. Eating me is illegal. It's a crime. The fuzzies. There we go. Let's make it a little bit of. Thank you for putting hair charms again. Yeah, but there's something so nice about smooth legs. I happily shave my legs every once in a while. Thank you for the bit on you. Oh, I missed this. Sorry. Camila. Thank you. All that standing around. Crazy. No. Vanya. Vanya, honey. That one, that just that word was. Unless I misread it. Oh, that is not what I wrote. That is not what I read. No, Vanya, you're fine. I read. There was a misspell. Yes. Oh, You're good, Vanya. I was only reading your part of the conversation. Mm. I just like reading your conversation, Vanya. My bad. I apologize. Wait, why are you not modded again? There you go. Mm-hmm. Though I now know where to add to the word ban list. I hadn't thought about that one. Morning, Mitchie. I am very sorry, Vanya. Did I? Oh, fine. Oh, well, thank you so much for the redeem. Yes, John, we got it now. We're good. We can drop it, please. You're good. You're good. This happens sometimes. Mm-hmm. Topic is at least more acceptable. Y'all would. Y'all would. Oh no, not one of these men's. Hate these things. I forget these ones even exist. Kitty cat, stay away from them, please. I don't want to hurt you. Cat, please, 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 please. I don't want to kill you. No. Mm-hmm. I'm not sure. Are you really censoring the word jump? Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. Chad, I've come down here with no food. Maybe I didn't think this one through. We're going back up top. There we go. Censor for Vanya's sake. You're scared, Chad. Oh no. Damn. Imagine having a job. Couldn't be me. Oh wait. It is me, unfortunately. I know, Doc. Can you imagine? Can you imagine? I'm indifferent on them. We will not have a normal topic today, will we? Is this what happens when I take away praise? Semi-retiring into a part-time job count? As being employed? I mean, technically, yeah, you still have a job, don't you? I personally don't have a preference towards them one way or the other. I mean, it's a part of the human body. You would. Oh, nice. I hope you enjoy the work. Chad, I'm looking forward to Monday again. Because then I gotta talk about D&D. Do y'all even remember where we were at in the campaign last time I was talking? It was a bunch of stuff happening. And you don't? Crazy. I can't believe you don't remember, Aika. Come on, kitty cats. Come on in. Kitty cats? Sorry, I just realized I'm muted. What happened with your projector? Why were you trying to throw it across the room? No. Man, I should make a tech support redeem where you can call me up. And I'll see if I can fix your tech. More like 30 an hour. I guess I could do like 35. Why is your IT department so bad? We're getting soft tacos later. I like the bamboo. Funding? Yeah, no, I mean, honestly, like, you could pay an IT guy $20 or $100 an hour, and you probably it just depends on your luck of the draw who you get. God, bamboo grows so fast, it's insane. You literally just planted that. I'm feeling okay. How you doing? Miss Vanya. Yeah, I'll be doing a teaching D&D lesson. We'll go over a lot of the basics slowly over time, including character building, explaining character concepts and that sort of thing. I'll probably just go through the player's handbook the day before, so today, and discuss what's in it. You too, Moss? Hi, Moss. Good morning. I hope you're doing okay. I hope you know you're very cared for. And that things will be alright. Promise. They just might take some time. It's always good to see you, Mouse. See, even that squid wants to come say hi to you. Oh. Wow, the squid's dying now. Oh well, squid's dead. And I'll be going over all the different concepts. Make sure you get some sleep. Remember, chat, if you'd like to have more general conversation or flirty conversation, the Discord does exist for a reason. Thank you. Your cat stole your spot. No. Take it back. Thank you, Anya. Fight the cat. Beat up the cat. Don't beat up your cat, actually. Let your cat survive. I understand if the bot is frustrating, but the bot is for my safety as well as your safety, to ensure that anyone who comes in is actually 18 plus, and it also prevents me or anyone on chat on the staff to have to personally see your ID. The option would be you send us your ID personally, or have it verified by a third party that we pay exclusively for that situation. A third party that does not collect any data beyond making sure that the ID is an ID. Totally fair. But I will definitely not be removing it, as we have had more than one underage person try to get into the space where there are lewd comments and such. We have more than one underage person who've come to this stream that I'm not able to verify, who have then tried to be like, well, I am blah blah blah, so I should be allowed in. No, there's more than just lewd comments there. One person said, well, while I'm not 18, I am emancipated, and then I banned them. Exactly. And without a third-party verification method, there's no way to confirm otherwise. Because a checkbox sure doesn't stop people. And as a content creator, it does not matter if somebody chose to be in that space knowing that they do not belong in that space. I will still be held accountable for any minors in that space. So again, for my safety and for yours. Yeah, I understand that, Iga. But I will say we do have 100 people currently in the server who have used the service. If a single one of them reported a single issue with any of their information being taken, not only would I quit using it, but I would press legal charges against the service. Even if the situation was irrelevant, I would immediately stop using it and push against it. And yeah, it's something that I have to pay for monthly. It's not a free service. I do pay for it monthly. Yeah, exactly. Come on in, kitties. Chat, we're missing a cat. Enjoy Moreau. Yeah. Which is also why I reduced the praise and other redeems. As we're missing Mango. As a lot of those redeems were definitely attracting people who gave me odd vibes. Let's see if we can find Mango. Mango, where'd you go, Mango, sweetie? Did I move too fast? Oh, Mango. The other one's name is Mittens. No. Now where's Mittens? Mango, where'd you go? There you are. Hi, Mango. Okay. Where are we? There's Mittens. Or should I call him Boots? Both work. Because look at his little feet. Alright. Mittens and Mango. Chad, do you think Mittens is a boy or a girl? No, looks like there's a little ad break, chat. I agree. Do we say Mango or Mittens? Mango's a girl. What about Mittens? What if Mittens doesn't believe in gender? You're right, Mittens doesn't believe in gender. What? Who? Why are they screaming? What do you want? What's up? You okay? You know, we'll go fishing. We'll get them some fish. Come on. This is a very queer-friendly space. That is something you're not uncomfortable. I would suggest not being in this space. Alright, we're just not gonna deal with Honeypot anymore. Can I have a sword? What do you want a sword for? Yeah. Sorry about that, chat. Honestly, I was getting red flags from all the talk about Canada and war. Oh. Hey, Anya? Can you spell the word sleepy for me? Yeah, that's it. That's it. It's just sleepy. It is a cute way of saying sleepy. Actually, can I fuck. This is gonna date me a bit. EB, as well as a lot of other ways of saying things, you know, the ooh, the oh, whoa, and all that kind of stuff, all come from this weird internet girl subculture back in the early 2000s. And so, you know, people going like EP and that kind of stuff is very like the cutesy lingos from that time. That's also where we have the word pupper, pupperino, and those sort of things. It's very millennial. The me. Kind of. I think me like has long connotations with comics and cartoons, but yeah. And Gina's a cute pupper. I keep her. Thank you for the follow. Kimiko. Yeah, Spell. What's up, Spell? How you doing? Enjoy your food. Oh no, I didn't want to have a baby. I thought you were just hungry. Thank you, Spell. That's too many kitties. That's too many kitties, Chad. No, don't stop showing me your baby. I should have had you spayed. Get yourself a pizza. I know, they're doinking on my Christian Minecraft server. I can't believe it. Exactly. No, I'm not giving them any more food. They can starve. There's no hearts. How was I supposed to know they're doink? Don't call me people. Peoples, that's crazy work right there. I suppose they're probably been called worse. Yeah, maybe I should play Power World sometime. Oh no. Well, I made one villager house and the villagers move in. Really? That is crazy. Oh, that is quick work. I fixed one house. And the villagers are like, no, you're increasing the value of this neighborhood. That's gentrification. I really do appreciate it, though, Spell. I do. Gentrification in my Christian Minecraft server. Oh, there's the good bunny. There's the good bunny. How's a good bunny doing? Stinky. Oh, good job, Anya. I'm proud of you. I really am proud of you. You did a great job. There we go. Alright, chat. Well, we have an ominous banner now. What happens if I put it down? You still here? Go play. Hi, Dylan. I go by he, they. Chat, what pronouns do you use? What pronouns do you use, Dylan? That is fair. I have not showered yet. They, them, he. I haven't showered. I might actually be stinky. I can't even lie. Alright, Goose. Feel free to try it out. Tell me how it feels. Don't we all just love Dar? Thank you, Ellie, for the lurk. 1, 2, 3, 5. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. I think it should be 6 to be even all the way across. I removed it due to the extreme redeems that are being done, as well as some of the audience that had brought in. But, Mosdorf, I know you are doing very well, and I am proud of you for being in touch with yourself, taking the time you need. You're doing very well. I am very, very proud of you. I most definitely did not say anything about touching myself. Bad Shay. Of course. Shay, just a little goofy is all. I really do think it's funny, though. The second I finish one house, the villagers are like, this is now a village, we must attack. Do you think they are disappointed to find nobody here? They saw the one door and immediately were like, where, buddy? True, I guess they did find me. Yeah. Australia got hail. Is that a problem, or is that something that we expect from Australia? redeems will be brought back for certain ASMR streams. I will definitely do tarot redeems for, I think at least doing a once a week ASMR tarot would be fun. That way I can get some more variety. Do you paint your nails? I usually get my nails done, but I haven't in a good long while. Been meaning to. They just don't feel right now. I like getting gel on them because the texture is very nice and makes my nails feel more solid. Though they've slowly been getting better again. I usually do black. I do like a matte black. Or when I'm dating somebody, my nails will be a version of theirs. But I've been single for 8 months now. So my nails have not been getting done lately. Yeah, what's your evil idea, Bunny? Maybe that's what I'll do. Somebody can elect or pay me, and I'll have nails to match theirs. That way they can feel connected with me for a month. I definitely suggest getting gel done if you get them done, though. It's a lot healthier, nicer, lasts longer. God, me, you should get it. Oh. Oh, Che, I'm excited to hear that you have a partner now. I hope that's all going well. I'm glad you found that person. What do you mean there's people? Carmia, do you not like people? I understand that. It's totally fine. I'm just curious. Curiouser and curiouser. Lucky. You definitely have the permission to get lucky. Cats, you know I love you. Yeah, we're sticking with barrels so the cats can get on them and not hold down my box. Not amass in new places. Oh yeah, I like to get my stuff done by individual nail stylists. The place that I would go to would be just one person, which it's gonna be so funny. I had a a nail lady, and her name was Lady. I don't know if her actual name was Lady, but she went by Lady, and I thought it was really interesting. 1 second. Good morning, Palmo. There we go. Let your brain melt. A fellow named Tramp. Chat, let's go all share a big bowl of spaghetti with a long noodle. Chat, imagine doing that, but you can't find a long noodle and you want to recreate the scene, so you just start trying to tie a bunch of noodles together, but it just ends up being a big noodly mess. Then you cry over your bowl of pasta because nothing you do ever turns out right. Sorry, just me. No? Okay. Enjoy your lurkies. Yeah, me too. I'd Google extra. No, here's what would happen, chat. I would Google extra long pasta, and they probably sell like a really, really long pasta straight. I'd be like, perfect, and I'd buy it. And then it would come in the mail, and I'd accidentally break it in like 16 pieces, and I'd try to tie it back together to fix my mistake, and it wouldn't work. It never works. I tie out the pasta. Okay. This is a square, right? 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. 1, 2, 3, 4, 6. This is not a square. How am I this bad at math? 1, 2, 3, 4, 6. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. And so I should be 12 across, right? Get out of the hole, kitty. It's not your hole. Get out of the hole, kitty. No, I'm sorry you're feeling nauseous. Okay. Okay, that should finish it off. I'm so bad at this, chat. I'm trying so hard to make a square. Thought I heard some weird noise outside, but I think we're good. You hear the weird noise? Daisy, Daisy, give me your answer true. I'm half crazy off of the love of you. It won't be a fancy marriage. I can't afford a carriage. Maybe how's it go? But you look sweet upon the seat, a bicycle built for two. Daisy, Daisy, give me your answer true. I'm half crazy off of the love of you. It won't be a a stylish marriage. I can't afford a carriage, but you'd look sweet on a seat, a bicycle built for two. Don't want to set the world on. I need to put some stuff away. Sleepy slasher, that'd be interesting. Don't they know it's the end of the world? What's up, Hans? I'm not feeding anymore. You're gonna start boinking. Which one of you is Boots now? I can't tell the difference between which one of you is Boots anymore. One of you is Mittens and one of you is Boots. This is why we don't let you guys have sex. We're not getting more kitties, chat. No more kitties. Why does the sun go on shining? Why does the sea rush the shore? Don't they know it's the end of the world? 'Cause you don't love me anymore. I love all that music. I don't want to set the world on fire. I just want to start a flame in your heart. If I had my one and only desire, that would be you. No one else would do. Blue moon, you saw me standing alone, without a dream in my heart, without a love of my own. Boom, boom, boom. Blue moon. My native language, I guess German is technically. The only thing I know in German, though, is Schneeflöckchen, Weißröckchen, wann kommt du geschneit? Das Blume und Blätter, wir haben dich, nein. Komm, setz dich am Fenster, du liebliche Sterne. That's all I really know of it. Or we can do the, es wenn die Wolken schlafen gehen, kann man uns am Himmel sehen. Wir haben Angst und sind allein. Gott weiß, dass ich kein Engel sein. And then I have the one other one, which is the Büch dich, gefährlich dir. Dein Gesicht habt mir egal, Büch dich. And of course, Palmo likes Rammstein. Palmo's sick. Oh Tannenbaum, wie grün sind deine Blätter? Oh Tannenbaum, where'd you get chicken from? Where did you, I mean, I appreciate the food, but where did you get the chicken from? Are my chickens dead? Stop killing my chickens. We're all living in America. America is wunderbar. We are all living in America. 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 This is not a love song. This is not a love song. Morning. That one sounded weird. Good morning, Art Witch. How you doing today? It's the lovely. Hey, bro, why you purring? It's a kitty. Don't go. That's so nice. Why is the kitty pushing me on the bed? They do. Oh, have you got me? Have you noticed they lay on top of me when I sleep? Oh, sorry, Chad. I had to hide the Woodines for a sec. Oh, it looks like Nia took back the first spot, so Nia's first now. Thank you for the stretch count. And for the lovely Palmer, I guess we are stuck here for a little while. We'll keep the voice like this, and we can see how long this lasts, okay? I do know, chat, I don't have a cat, but I think I might like one. I think a cat might be very nice to have. I'm not eating this raw. We are not really that fond of these raw potatoes. The potatoes can be poisonous if they are raw, so be very careful, okay? Do not eat the potato when it's raw. It will not be good for you. I hope you understand this. If you do not understand this, I can explain this to you again, but you must be careful, okay? Good. Now, where is this thing here? There we go. Good. I don't know about that personally. I am a bigger fan of dogs than I am cats. Maybe it's because I have not lived with many cats, or the cats that I lived with were very independent and did not care too much about the people who they lived with, but dogs have always been very fond of it. And so we have a few more minutes on this redeem, probably 5 or oh, sorry, not 5 minutes, that would be the entire time over again. Maybe we will only be doing it for another 3 minutes, yes. Oh, that's fair. Now there was when I was much younger, there was, not much younger, actually, no, I'm talking about, wow, that was loud. Why would they make it so loud? That's better though, that sounds not too bad. That I don't mind. Now what was I talking about, chat? Oh yes, so when more like a year ago, when I was still with my last partner, they had or their parents had these 2 hairless cats. You know, the naked ones. The ones who look like a raw chicken. Now, the funniest thing about these cats is, did you know that they can get sunburned? One came in and he was red because he laid out in the sun all day, and I was like, oh no. The poor little kitty, if the kitty had been paying attention, perhaps he would not have gotten burnt, but he did get burnt. He's a poor little guy. And the other one was like one of those, have you ever seen those roosters who are exclusively black? Now one of them was white and one of them was black, and both of them were very, very cuddly. And I imagine too, if I was naked all the time in a very big house that was kept cold, I too would be very cuddly. And so they would all snuggle up on me, because you know, I wear the fuzzy jackets, I had a beard at the time, and they would lay on my chest and just purr for hours, and it was great. I love those kitties. So yes, my point standing, if I had one of those growing up instead of a dog, perhaps I'd like cats more. But like I said earlier, the cats that I have known have been very independent and not snuggly. Though, I have heard of one of them. Yes, I had a beard at that time. I had a beard once, and at one time I had just a mustache. Now I keep everything very short. It's mostly just stubbles. Enough to add shading to the face, but not too much to be too obtrusive. Something with very little maintenance. You'd be surprised how nice it is to not have to worry about maintenance. Oh, a mustache? Nah, not anymore. At the time I had a mustache, but now it is just short. That I can grow facial hair. Yes. Oh, sorry to hear that. May I suggest the rosemary and the peppermint oil? Why not? I've had very long hair, I've had short hair, I've had beards, I've had no beard. I've had no hair on my body at all except for the top of my head before. That was another time though. Chat, we only have one life. Have as many experiences as you possibly can before you are not able to have the experiences, you know? Why live your entire life with the same style of hair and brown hair or of whatever color, when one day your hair will get thin no matter what? It may not lose it, you might always have hair, but it's not going to be as robust and as vibrant as it was when you were younger. So have fun with it, you know. Experience the full spectrum of hair while you still can. As of 5 minutes ago, we've now run out of German time. Oh, Moss Dwarf, different times. I've been through the full spectrum. There are times when I just wanted to look cute, and there are times when I wanted to look more masculine. There have been times where I've just hated every single thing about myself. And there's been times where I've absolutely loved everything about myself. And right now, I'm just, you know, I exist right now. I'm working on it. Regular therapy appointments and all that. We'll get there eventually, you know? Do it, Echo. Take your time. And remember, that was the noise of an illager. What are you all doing here? This is my town. Hmm. Honestly, I get that, though. I get that. Chat, could you hear that TTS, or could only I hear that? Perfect. I like that. Okay. That's how we'll leave it for ASMR. Because then it feels like y'all can get to talk to me. Shoot. Okay, chat. Oh no, I can hear it. That means that you get to talk to me directly. I like that better like that. Well, I only turned it off because we're doing the ASMR right now because it was very loud. I'll just turn off the redeem until we don't do ASMR, okay? Only you can make me feel so true. Whatever I can do, it's because of you. Only you. All you mamas, put your hands up. Hey yo, Captain Jack. They're very considerate of their harassment. Okay. I think it's time to start making this into the place I actually want it to be. I just need the right kind of stone for it. Oh, that's what I wanted to do. Okay. So, chat, here's the plan. I need to make a automatic smelter to save me some time so I don't forget to, actually grow food. Good night, Mitchie. Sleep well. And I do need doggos, you're right. So our goal right now is going to be to get as much iron as possible. So I can make an automatic smelter. And I can potentially make a self-farming farm. Maybe not fully self-farming, but like all I have to do is press a button. I don't know what the ominous banner does, chat. But I have two of them now. Right. And the banner's ominous. You right. You right. Yeah, should I place it then? Of course I wear cologne. I have two sets of cologne that I like to wear. I have Joe Malone as my primary person I wear for colognes. But recently I've been trying a series that's called the Heart Collection. And it has a bunch of different heart-themed colognes. Good morning, Nikio. How you doing? I should probably make like mine. Yeah, so one's called Broken Heart, one's called Cold Heart, one is like Bloody Heart and that kind of thing. Oh my god, chat. A cologne sponsorship. Imagine, first off, if I can get my own scent. And then I can send little sample scents with like merch, especially if you get like the plushie, or you get like the body pillow. And that way you can scent the body pillow like me. I also have one cologne that's based on the Magnus archive. Okay. But I want my own scent. Because I think it'd be so cool to have my own scent. I know it's probably not the best idea, but I want my own scent. That's right, chat. I would like my own 50 cent. Don't you know it's the end of the world? Alright, let's find a little place to do a little strip mining. We're about to impact the environment in a negative fashion. Yay. One, 2, 3, 4, 5, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12, 13. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12, 13. If I was a mythical creature, what would I be? Out of any mythical creature? A voice actor who can make enough money to live off of. He's a goose, the mythical goose. Chat member, chat. Geese aren't real. Mythical creatures only. Thank you for the like. Well, chat, guess what time it is? It is time for me to go to work. I might do some strip mining off of stream, honestly. It's kind of relaxing. That way I don't have to sit here all day and y'all can watch me strip mine. I don't know if y'all wanted to see me strip mine. But this was a lot of fun, chat. A lot of fun. Okay, let's see if we can find somebody to raid into real quick. Who do we have? Oh, Hoshi's live. How's Hoshi doing? We're gonna take a look at Hoshi real quick and see how they're doing. Oh, I haven't advertised one. I'm sorry, chat. I'm waiting for the advertisement to finish. God, this is such a long Borderlands ad. Jesus. Go away. Go say hi to Hoshi. You all be good. I'll miss you all very, very much. Thank you for the lucky raid. Please copy that, and I will see you all next time. Goodbye, lovies. Bye, lovely, lovely, lovelies. Have a good one.